Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mailbox for the 26th of May 2011. This is your daily community interaction podcast for all kinds of questions related to gaming. Feel free to email questions for future Mailbox segments to mailbox@cynicalbrit.com. The game in the background today goes by the name of Capsized, which I did a WTF is of, and I'm playing a little bit more for you right now. First email comes in from Michael Braun that says, "Hello Totalbiscuit, having watched a lot of live streams for various games, including your StarCraft 2 Shoutcrafts, I've noticed that a lot of commentators tend to be very in-scene, often spending more time talking about random periphery things rather than the game currently being shown on the stream. Though this is understandable with who they will consider to be their target audience, and that the commentators often just be whoever is looking after the stream at that point in the day. However, this makes these streams very hard to watch for anyone that's new to the game, and won't have a good idea of what's going on in the game or what on earth the commentators are actually talking about. Do you think esports will be stuck in a niche when it comes to coverage until it gets more commentators geared towards more mainstream viewers to help them understand what's going on and make the games much more accessible to watch?" Well, it's difficult not to be biased on this particular issue because I aim a lot of my commentary towards the mainstream and the casual and the non-player base as well in this particular genre. Now, I think that it's very important that we do have commentators that do that, but I think that, honestly, this is already happening quite a lot. You can look at the two most popular commentators in the world at the moment, that's HD and Husky, who are both very mainstream, and they appeal to a massive demographic of YouTube viewers who either don't play StarCraft or play on a very casual basis or at a very low level, and they're enjoying StarCraft as a sport and a spectator sport as opposed to something that's very complex. The good thing about StarCraft is that it can be enjoyed on multiple levels. Now, I wouldn't say that we need more mainstream commentators. What I would say is we need a better balance. And in that regard, I'm talking about the whole play-by-play and color synergy that you find in mainstream broadcast sports. You got one guy that's a professional broadcaster who usually isn't a sportsman, although there are some exceptions to that rule. And then you've got the color guy that's usually, for the most part, either a coach or an ex-player or something along those lines, maybe even a current player that's just come on for the broadcast, who'll provide a lot of background information. What you'll generally have as well to back it up is a stats team who are providing on-screen information about all sorts of different things, and usually the color guy is the guy that addresses that, or maybe they'll have three guys. There'll be a play-by-play, an analyst, and a color, and the color will focus primarily on things like player stats as well as player history, and he tries to, as I said, add color to the broadcast by giving you background information about those players, and then the analyst is analyzing plays and stuff like that. So there's a lot of flexibility there, but I think, if anything, StarCraft does need to move away from two things. One is having a cast which is nothing but analysis outside of, say, a Day 9 daily environment. And in that situation, it's there for learning. That's what the episodes are all about. Sports is not for learning. That's not why you watch football. It's not why you watch hockey, tennis, or anything like that. You don't watch that to learn how to play those sports. No, you just watch it to actually enjoy the presentation. I think it does need to move away from that, and also it needs to move away from in-jokes. This is one of the first things we got taught on university radio when we first started getting trained for that, was in-jokes are bad. All the time, without exception. It might make the guys who are watching feel really at home. It's like, hey, we're part of the in-crowd, we get the joke, etc. But it puts new guys right off because they don't understand what the hell is going on. That's the kind of thing that needs to be avoided. The worst thing that you can possibly do is put out a broadcast that actively puts new people off. That's a horrible idea. This one comes in from Pete, who says, "Dear TB, with the launch of Portal 2, Gabe Newell was reported to have said that it might be Valve's last game with an isolated single-player experience. Also, with games now developing shorter single-player campaigns, i.e. COD and Homefront, with the majority of the work being put into the multiplayer, single-player seems to be an afterthought in today's internet world. My question is, what are your thoughts on the future of both single-player and multiplayer gaming, not only on consoles, but on PC as well? Obviously, there's a lot of money made from multiplayer games, especially with the recent subscription system for COD announced, good old Activision Blizzard, but where do you think the future of gaming lies?" Well, the thing that I actually took from that quote, which a few people did as well, although it seems to be largely ignored, is the fact that he said isolated single-player experience. He didn't say Valve's last game with a single-player experience. He said isolated single-player experience. What does that mean? That means the idea of merging single-player and multiplayer or having some kind of drop-in, drop-out system. I'd like to give an example of a single-player game that doesn't have an isolated single-player experience. It goes by the name of Demon's Souls. It's for the PS3. Some of you might be aware of it. When you are online with Demon's Souls, you can play it single player, and indeed the game is kind of designed around that, but there are things that can happen, like for instance you'll actually see bloodstains on the ground, and you can relive the last few moments of another player's death online, and that'll actually give you information about upcoming hazards, which is very, very useful in a game that's extremely unforgiving like Demon's Souls. You can also, say, have a look at messages on the ground that can be left by other players. Now, that is a single-player game, but it's not an isolated single-player game. It has some elements of multiplayer and community going into it. Another example would be L.A. Noire, for instance. L.A. Noire has the ability, by using intuition points, to actually ask the community, kind of like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It'll actually give you a set of stats based on what other players have done. And I don't believe it's currently working on PlayStation. It certainly wasn't the last time I tried it, but that was a few days ago. Maybe they got it fixed. But once again, that's a single-player game, but it's not an isolated single-player game. So that's what I think Gabe Newell actually meant by that there would be more community interaction or more optional multiplayer or meta-universe elements within the game that actually interacted with the single-player experience, rather than just saying, oh, well, we're just going to make multiplayer games in future. That's not what he meant. I'm almost convinced about that. Well, in the case of the way that gaming is actually going, it's the way that the market dictates. Right now, the current trend seems to be towards online persistence. As in, you take shooters that would traditionally be just, hey, join the server, play, and then leave, and you add a persistent element into them. And people keep coming back, and it's a fairly powerful motivator to keep playing the game because it's the old, hey, we're going to dangle some rewards in front of you kind of thing. And some people actually play the game for those rewards and not for the actual enjoyment of the title, which is the most bizarre thing ever. I've had some people claim, oh, well, I've got my character at max level, there's no point in playing anymore. What about the game? We could play for the game? That sounds like a plan. But I don't know how long that's really going to go on for. It's starting to get a bit obnoxious, actually. They're putting persistent elements into frickin' everything, to the point where shooters that don't even need them are getting them. So I think that's actually one of the problems I've got with, say, Section 8 Prejudice, which I think is an amazing game, really, really great. But the persistence is irrelevant. It doesn't need to be there. It's like, well, you unlock all sorts of different stuff as you go. Why? I play Section 8 Prejudice because I enjoy it. It's the same reason I played Battlefield 2. I didn't care about unlocking those secondary weapons. I didn't give a damn. It doesn't bother me at all. I'd still happily play Bad Company 2, even though I've fully maxed out something. I used to play Recon. I maxed that out first, and I still played Recon. I didn't bother to max out any of the other professions, the classes. I didn't want to. I didn't see the need. I don't have to chase after rewards in order to make the game feel worthwhile. It would be nice to see games moving away from that and going back to the idea of, well, you play multiplayer because it's fun, not you play multiplayer to earn imaginary internet rewards. That would be kind of cool. I don't really know what direction it's going in, honestly. I think there's going to be a lot more of that. We're not through it yet. It seems a bit obnoxious now, but we're still going to get a lot of this persistent stuff. And I have a feeling it's going to start applying itself to other games. We saw it with Command & Conquer 4, even though it was a disastrous failure. But then we've got games like End of Nations coming out, as well as a number of other RTS titles. And, of course, the reboot of Command & Conquer, which may also have some persistence in it. I think that's going to apply to a lot of other games for the time being, and that's what we're going to be stuck with. But I think we will see more crossover between single-player and multiplayer in terms of persistence in your actual character profile. We've got one that's coming in from Tim here. It seems to be wire-related. It says, Dear TB, well, patch notes came out today, and basically, no Abyssal Maw. The reasoning behind it seems to be the same as their excuse for Path of the Titans. Oh, it wouldn't be as cool as this other thing in the game. Specifically, it wouldn't be as cool as the Firelands daily quests. Am I the only one detecting an unacceptable amount of arrogance coming from Blizzard? The nerfs didn't really convince me to quit, but I think this might. I can only hope this attitude does not translate over to Diablo or StarCraft. I've always liked Blizzard and their products, but this recent change in attitude seems to have left me with a sense of hate towards them as regards to World of Warcraft. I believe that if Blizzard continues down this path it is taken, WoW will die, and I will cry as I dance on its grave. Now, I only need to convince some of my friends to join Rift or DC Universe Online or even EVE. Yeah, it's another one of these things. It is an unacceptable piece of arrogance. The Firelands daily quests are so much cooler than a new 5-man. No, they're not. They're actually mostly rubbish. You saw them on my channel, for God's sake. It's a bunch of dailies. Nobody cares. A 5-man dungeon is a much more valuable piece of content. And it also comes down to broken promises. I mean, how many have we had with Cata? We're going to have Path of the Titans. No, we're not. I remember actually going down to the Cataclysm launch event down in London, and I remember them running the trailer, and Path of the Titans was still on that trailer, the one they run for it, on the day it came out. It's like, Path of the Titans, and a bunch of us up in the press area that knew what we were talking about, as opposed to the vast majority of ponces that were there for the free booze, just started sniggering. And why wouldn't we? It's like, come on, Blizzard. At your own launch event, you're still claiming that this system is in the game. It's bollocks. Yeah, I think they're taking it the wrong way. We're going to do more daily quests instead of a new 5-man. You know the one that we promised? We said we'd get a new 5-man out every major patch? Yeah, we didn't. And what about Firelands? It was supposed to be there from launch. Yeah, it didn't come. What about 4.1? No, it didn't come there either. It's frustrating, isn't it? The funny thing about Path to Titans is that it probably would have been that one unique thing that kept a lot more people playing, because it was the big, genuine evolution within the game. And that's not something that's actually in Cataclysm as combined to even Wrath, for instance. Wrath had a brand new class. That's the evolution of the game right there. That completely changed the dynamic of WoW. And in this case, it just doesn't. You know, there's nothing in Cataclysm to change that dynamic around at all. It's not good, and it's one of the factors, of course, that convinced me eventually just to quit. I've been losing enthusiasm for the game for the months, and this was just the straw that broke the camel's back. And yeah, claiming that a bunch of daily quests is cooler than the Abyssal Moor dungeon? Pff, bollocks to that. This one comes in from Morton that says, since you've changed the Azeroth Daily to everything mailbox, I hope you can give me some advice about this thing. The thing is namely called downloadable content. The first thing I want to ask is, what do you feel about downloadable content as a whole? My old policy is to never buy downloadable content, as I think the content should have been in the game in the first place. I understand some developers still work on games after they've been released, but when a game like Dragon Age 2 has DLC that you have to pay for on the first day, I feel the game developers are just trying their best to milk the consumer of as much money as possible, when they easily could have just added those parts already available into the game, as it was clearly ready to download for a price when the game was released. I also don't support things such as items you can buy for your robot in Portal 2 for real-life money. If you want your robot to look any different at all from anyone else's, you have to pay a certain amount of money for, say, a hat or a flag. Couldn't Valve at least have made a few of those items free so you can customize your robot a bit? Actually, I think they did, didn't they? I'm fairly sure there are some items that you can unlock via achievements within the game. You just can't unlock all of them, so that's not really an issue. So I've got one hard and fast rule when it comes to DLC. Under no circumstances should there ever be zero-day DLC. Anything developed before the release of the game should be in the game, unless it is way, way too incomplete and buggy and useless to actually be a part of it. And even then, as far as I'm concerned, it should be released for free. I am okay with post-launch DLC. Totally fine with it. Not a problem. As long as I have paid for all of the work that went into the game before its release, and that includes any kind of nonsense that's going on with zero-day DLC. As long as I get all of that, I'm happy. Everything past that, that's cool. You can charge whatever the hell you like for it, and I can decide whether or not I want to partake in it. I don't expect free post-launch content. I expect bug fixes and patches to make sure that the game works as intended, but I do not expect anything else. With the thing like the Portal 2 robots, I actually got a lot of flack for this because I said that the zero-day DLC for that was unreasonable. People said, oh, it's just hats and flags. It's like, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be an entire set of levels or a single skin. It doesn't matter. It has to be in the game on launch if you developed it before the game launches. That is my hard and fast rule. Everything else after that, it's free for all. You do whatever the hell you please, and I'll choose what I think is worthwhile and what is not in order to actually purchase. With regards to Dragon Age 2, I have the same problem with that. The release of that DLC is basically just taking the game, slicing a piece off it, and saying, well, we want to charge you a bit extra for this. And I find that highly unreasonable. LA Noire actually had a similar thing. Admittedly, it was only a very small part of the game. I still object to it. I don't think it's enough to stop people buying the game. I mean, there was a suggestion, for instance, that people boycott LA Noire, which is an absolutely ridiculous idea, because they had, I think, a case or something, a very short case, that was available with a GameStop exclusive pre-order or something like that. And I don't like that. I think that's a fairly stupid thing. I mean, I'm okay with, say, outfits, or maybe a custom car or something like that. An entire piece of game content? No, I'm not okay with that. Same problem I have with Deus Ex Human Revolution. Apparently that's got something in there that is a pre-order only. Not happy about that one little bit. But stuff like outfits and whatever, that's going to be a pre-order bonus. I'm alright with it. But I do object to everything else. And honestly, I think that companies do need to stop taking the piss when it comes to DLC, because if they don't, people are just going to stop buying DLC altogether, or they're going to be looking towards pirating it. And that's not what you want at all. Again, if you do right by your customers and you release good pieces of content, then people will buy it. There are examples of PC developers that are doing just that. A recent example would be the faction pack for Ruse, for instance, which puts in an entire new faction with 27 new units, and it was reasonably priced. And then an example of the other side of it would be Relic, who decided, well, we're going to release War Gear packs that were available for pre-orders for £2 each, and also a reskin pack for £5 that has nothing worthwhile to the game whatsoever. So yeah. There you go. Those are the two extremes of that. Okay, folks, remember you can email in mailbox@cynicalbrit.com. That is mailbox@cynicalbrit.com for future episodes of this show. The game I've been playing in the background is called Capsized, and I will see you next time.